All right, welcome everyone. I'm Sabrina Christovac. I'm part of the Ops Control team at Air Liquide and the co-director of educational programming for the Women's Energy Network of Houston. I will be your host for today's webinar, and I have the honor of introducing our speaker, Natasha Cherendichenko. On behalf of our WEN leadership team, we are pleased that you are able to join us today for our webinar. These driven and talented women you see on the screen make up our WEN Houston board. They lead the teams and programs that make WEN the powerhouse organization that it is today. We created this programming to give us all the opportunity to learn from some of our WEN Houston executive members. I do truly believe that as we learn together, we will be able to add value to our organizations, our teams, our WEN community, and our families. As you may know, WEN is a not-for-profit organization. Therefore, we cannot exist without the support of all of our sponsors and all of those willing to volunteer their time. So thank you to all of our volunteers for keeping this organization thriving over the years. And a big thank you to our national sponsors, as well as our chapter sponsors and partners. For those of you new to WEN, WEN is an international organization with 20 chapters across the US and Mexico. We will be opening new chapters throughout the US, and we'll be launching a chapter in Canada soon. We have over 6,000 members, and of those 6,000, about 2,000 are here in Houston. Our mission is to develop unique programming that provides networking opportunities and fosters career and leadership development to women who work in the energy value chain. And now, to capitalize on those networking opportunities, we are going to launch our first set of breakout rooms. We will be in these breakout rooms for about 10 to 15 minutes. You'll be given a 1-minute warning that will automatically bring you back to the main session at the end of that time. We strongly recommend turning on your cameras during the breakout sessions to create a more organic conversation. And in your breakout rooms, please go ahead and introduce yourselves. Get to know your small group and discuss what is your experience or exposure to renewable natural gas. All right, welcome back, everyone. I hope you made some great connections and had fruitful conversations with your breakout rooms. As we come back to the main meeting room, we ask that you please put yourself on mute to avoid any disruptions. You can leave your camera on or you can turn it off to go ahead and eat some lunch. And we will be checking the chat function throughout the talk, so please feel free to ask any questions or comments on there. And Natasha, do you want to go ahead and start to share your screen? Perfect, starting to see your screen sharing. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. Born and raised in Melbourne, Australia, Natasha brings 18 years of energy experience to Certarus. As the Chief Operating Officer, Natasha is responsible for leading the day-to-day engineering, operations, logistics, and HSE teams for Certarus. Her focus on health and safety and operational excellence ensures Certarus teams safely and reliably deliver low-carbon energy solutions to their customers across North America. Natasha previously held the role of Vice President for Water and Flowback Services for Tetra Technologies, responsible for strategic direction, innovative technology, personnel development, and operational efficiency, as well as driving profitability and HSEQ performance. Prior to joining Tetra, Natasha held a variety of operational and functional leadership roles over a 16-year career with Schlumberger, starting as a field engineer trainee in the hydraulic fracturing in Midland, Texas. Natasha holds a Bachelor's of Chemical Engineering and Bachelor's of Commerce degrees from Monash University, she helped me with that one, in Australia, and a Master's in Oil and Gas Management from Heriot-Watt University in Scotland. With that introduction, Natasha, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Sabrina. I really appreciate the introduction. As she mentioned, I'm Natasha Cheretnichenko, currently the COO at Certarus, and really appreciate the invitation to talk with you all this morning or this afternoon shortly. Thank you to the Women's Energy Network for hosting me today. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about a bit of my career perspectives with respect to an operations leadership career in the oil and gas industry. And then secondly, also talk about renewable natural gas, RNG, and provide a bit of an introduction to that as it's becoming a very hot topic as the push towards ESG and low carbon energy solutions comes into the broader market. So with that, we'll start with a little bit of my career. Sabrina provided a bit of a nice overview, but wanted to share a number of perspectives and really three parts that I want to touch on. Sort of my first 5 years in oil and gas, in engineering and in the field. The second one talking about functional roles and the importance of them to really broadening my career and my management experience. And finally, over the last several years, really developing and finding my own leadership style and sort of being comfortable with that and figuring out how that works. So I've got a number of pictures up. I'll just talk around them, and if there's questions about specific pictures you want more information on, let me know, but we'll try to hit the highlights. So as Sabrina noted, after I finished my undergraduate degrees in Australia, I moved to Midland, Texas, to start a job with Schlumberger as a field engineer trainee on the hydraulic fracturing side. So this is, the heart of the Permian Basin, coming out of the early 2000s downturn. And I must say I didn't know a whole lot about Midland, Texas, and the Permian when I started. In fact, when my recruiter gave me the offer letter, it just said Midland, U.S. And I remember asking her, well, where is this Midland? The U.S. is a big place. And she's like, I don't know. So I typed it into whatever the precursor to Google was, back in 2003, and there was 2 Midlands, one in Texas and one in Minnesota. And I took an educated guess that it was probably not the Minnesota one. And yeah, sure enough, June 1st arrived in Midland with a dust storm and fully exposed to the Permian Basin. So, you know, it was very much a conventional oil and gas play at that time. We were very fortunate. We had a range of operations and very busy. And so it was a fantastic place to start and learn about the business. And, you know, I spent the first several months working basically as an equipment operator, learning the equipment, studying some of the technical material, and really just getting a sense of the operations and what it meant. So, you know, typical work day, start somewhere between 2 and 4 a.m., get to the facility, you know, get the trucks ready, drive out to location, rig up, do execute one frac stage, rig down, and drive back to the shop sometimes early in the afternoon, sometimes later in the afternoon, sometimes the next day. So it was a very unusual work day, certainly a different work day and a work week than many of my friends were going through back in Australia. It was pretty tough, but a lot of fun, and I learned a tremendous amount. There was also a time before porta potties were super common on location because we were only out there for a day. So that was some adjustments there that had to be made. And really during my first 5 years at Schlumberger, I spent them in Texas in very field heavy roles, moving to Graham, Texas, and then to Bryan, Texas as my first role as a field service manager. So first real opportunity to be a manager. And looking after sort of 3 frac crews in the East Texas area. So it was great experience. Schlumberger definitely throws you in to the deep end, and there's a lot of support there, but also a lot of responsibility and quite a challenging time. But again, hugely important to my career. During that period too, Schlumberger kicked off their Connect Women initiative. And so that was really fantastic to be able to get involved in the startup of that program. And you know, got to be involved in one of the Women in Technology events for STEM university students at the headquarters. So was great to be able to get involved in that as part of my career, meet some amazing women from Schlumberger, and also see the excitement with some of those students coming through as well. So really, you know, I really grew to appreciate how passionate I was about the operations side of the business. And, you know, some of the most satisfying parts of my career, when I think back over it, are times when you'd see the crews drive back into the facility after, you know, a safe and successful week. And that really gave me such a sense of satisfaction when things were executed well and safely, and customers were happy. You know, that was a big highlight for me. And really, if I look back over those first 5 years, you know, some things I probably knew about myself and how I operated and how I worked really solidified. And if I boil them down, it's a few things. One, you know, hands-on training for me and a hands-on role, being close to the operations, was very critical, something that I appreciated. I liked knowing how things worked. You know, I enjoyed being close to the action, and also that gives you a really great opportunity to learn the business and learn from those around you. You know, my university motto is Incora Ampara, which loosely translates as I am always learning. And then I think that's something that stuck with me, you know, for all of my life, and being curious and wanting to understand more about how things operate. And, you know, starting as basically an equipment operator, you're dependent, regardless of whether you have an engineering degree or not. You know, somebody you're learning from has run that piece of equipment for multiple years, and you need to learn from them and understand. And they're the people I still called several years later, you know, if we were having issues, to sort of say, hey, remember that time that happened? Can you remind me what you did and how we troubleshot it, and you know, if that doesn't work, what else do you suggest? You know, and so it was great for building a network of really talented, passionate people that were really good at what they did. The other one for me was, you know, chip in and do what's expected and then do a bit more, right? So you always want to put your hand up. You know, some of it's tough, you know, driving a crew van at 3 a.m, not my favorite part of things I've done in my career, but that was part of being part of the crew and chipping in and being willing to just go out and do that stuff certainly I think earned me a lot of respect and certainly then enables some of those other conversations to go a lot more smoothly. The other one from those first 5 years was definitely, you know, taking on responsibility is a great thing. You learn a lot, you challenge yourself. It can be terrifying and very stressful, but certainly very rewarding. When I did my first breakout job, where I was sort of the person in charge of a little acid crew out there in the Permian, I had maybe a year and a half in the company, and our crew was myself, my engineer trainee, also a woman, and then 2 older equipment operators, both about 5'3", and when we would show up on location, you know, everyone on the workover rig would kind of give us this look like, who on earth is here and what are you doing? And, you know, but 5 minutes in, once we'd get out, we'd rig up, we were organized, we worked together well, you know, by the end of the job, like, hey, you'll be back here tomorrow, right? Because we're used to working with you now. We know you take care of business. And so, yeah, definitely terrifying some moments there, but really rewarding when you see things come together. So the other thing with Schlumberger, I think perhaps a little bit unique is they definitely use a range of different roles and happy to put people into different roles to broaden your management skills and expose individuals to different parts of the business, and having the opportunity to dive into some of those functional roles certainly has been very important to my career. And certainly as I get older and move into different positions, really appreciative of how well-rounded that's made me as a manager, you know, and being able to have discussions with HSE or HR or contracts or marketing, because I've dipped into those roles previously. And I'm certainly no expert or you know, have qualifications, but just being able to have spent some time definitely helps. So, you know, after those 5 years in operations, and a lot of late night phone calls, early morning phone calls, you know, lots of competing stressors from customers, P&L, employees, day-to-day compliance. You know, I did need a bit of a break and was offered an opportunity to move back to Australia. And while I was there, I spent a year as recruiting manager in the HR function, and then a year in a business development role supporting Eastern Australia, New Zealand, and Papua New Guinea. And you know, I was recruiting then during the 2008-2009 financial crisis, which was, again, had some unique challenges, and did some recruiting, but also unfortunately we had to defer a lot of roles. So again, also got my first taste of managing a significant downturn, being part of the HR team. But I worked with an amazing HR manager, and she, you know, certainly really helped me transition from a direct operations approach to more of an influencing role. And that again has stuck with me. So one of the phrases she used brilliantly as a way to sort of challenge and solicit feedback was, help me understand. So that's certainly something I still use today when I perhaps am not sure about something, you know, help me understand why we need to go that way or why we need to approach it. Is a great way to open up dialogue without coming across confrontationally. The BD role certainly gave me an opportunity to understand the strategic sales piece, And then later in my career, I got an opportunity to work as the product line representative with the engineering sustaining teams. And so that, again, gave me an opportunity to get experience on things like intellectual property, the strategy of the business, and sort of engineering stage gate processes, even though it was a pretty short stint. So then as I sort of moved back into line management, I started to think a bit more about my own leadership style, maturing as an individual and as an employee. And after 2 years in Australia, which was a lot of fun, I started to miss a little bit the dynamic nature of operations, and also my partner, who's now my husband, who was living in Washington DC at the time, and was a bit of a long commute from Perth to DC. So it was probably the first time in my career I'd really asked for a transfer, and but I felt, at that point in my career, I had enough credibility and background to say I would appreciate getting back to the US if I can, and ideally into an operations role. But I'll take whatever I can get if I can get back towards the Northeast, and was offered the chance to go to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in late 2010, with the growth of the Marcellus Shale really starting up at that point. Probably some of the most fun and enjoyable roles I've had was during my time in Pennsylvania. We had an amazing team and a really strong and compassionate manager who's still, he's still a friend and mentor to this day. And the culture that he created really helped me shape what I wanted to be seen of as a manager, and things I wanted to pick up as a manager. And that team environment where everyone worked together, and there may have been some heated conversations occasionally and frustrations. We were growing very rapidly, but it all came from a good place of wanting to get better, and we certainly pushed each other as a team and as a business. It also, it was my first role managing managers, and I think was a good transition to really think about my leadership style, and again moving to more of a coach rather than sort of having to direct, and let the managers underneath me also find some of their style as well. Got a lot of feedback. Again, we were a pretty close team, so certainly people gave you feedback, and you saw how things were going. And I think having that bit of distance taught me to be able to not take things quite so personally, right? As an individual and wanting to be a successful individual, always very dedicated and want things to go well. And there's some things you can manage, and we were just talking earlier, there's some things that will fall off the table, and it's about making sure that the right things stay on the table when you're busy and stressed, and you work with that going forward. So I also, again, was still involved in the Connect Women, and was really wanting to grow and support women in the organization. And I think you get used to being part of a male-dominated industry, and particularly working in the operations. And you just forget sometimes that often you're the only or one of very few women in the room. But I do recall in 2012, there was a great period where we were part of sort of the Eastern US region, and we'd stop and take a look, and we had women sort of all through the operations management chain, sort of 3 or 4 levels across. And we also had a number of really strong sort of sales engineers and field engineers, women as well. And it was really nice to be part of that organization and see the strength that was being developed in the pipeline as well. Let's switch to some different slides. So while I was finishing up in Pittsburgh, I started my master's degree. By distance, I took that distance learning through Schlumberger, and my husband and I got married. And we started to have a lot more conversations about career between the two of us, and he talked to his company about working remotely. So that would allow us to actually maybe live in the same city for once, which was kind of nice, and potentially move again for work opportunities that were coming up. So it's definitely a case of be careful what you wish for. After 4 years in Pittsburgh, we did 4 moves in 4 years, including a number international, and moved to Houston, Denver, Buenos Aires, and London in the space of 4 years. So definitely be careful what you wish for, but was a great opportunity to pick up a whole bunch of different roles and see some very different places. The assignment in Buenos Aires was a little bit of a lateral move for me from the managing the Western US, but again, put your hand up. It was a chance to experience a very different business environment. Most of my career had been in the US, and they were certainly looking for a US experience with the rise of the Vaca Muerta unconventional play there in central Argentina. Again, it gave me a chance to hone and think about my leadership style and continue to build on what I like to try to cultivate, which is certainly a collaborative environment and a supportive leadership. And certainly the team in Argentina traditionally had this phrase, don't worry, it'll be fine. And I would find out, a few weeks later that actually it wasn't fine. and they were just hoping things would work out. And it took a bit of coaching and chatting with the team there to say, look, if you tell me about this, if you let me know when there's challenges and we talk about it, let me use my network, let's navigate, let's brainstorm on how we solve this together. And if we don't solve it, that's fine, but I'm then part of this as well. And it took a few months, but we finally got to a point where they were comfortable talking to me about things, and I think built a much better team culture for the group. The other thing for me is, my leadership style is very much in the field. I like to get out to the field. I like to see what's going on, and I find that it allows you to really understand and see some of the challenges, opportunities, those hallway conversations, the conversations in the car or the pickup while you're driving 3 hours to the field site. You learn a lot, you chat on a lot of things, and I think importantly, it builds a lot of trust and credibility. And for me, especially having moved so many times and so frequently, you need to be able to build trust and credibility very, very quickly. Finally, after 16 years with Schlumberger, I made the difficult decision to part ways and took on the VP water and flowback role at Tetra. Not directly in operations, but certainly, again, looking at technology and engineering and marketing, and a really great team there to be part of. And then about 6 months ago, another tough decision, but extremely fantastic decision, started with Soteris, where I'm really excited about the direction of what the company's doing and their place in this energy transition, and really their collaborative, intense desire to be a complete leader in what they do. So we're poised for a lot more growth, and that's a really exciting place to be. So I've certainly had a wide variety of opportunities in leadership and functional roles, and I've worked with an amazing, diverse group of managers and team members, and try to pick up things along the way of people I want to emulate or that I really respect, and take those on to hone my own style, and ultimately want to try, but still try to stay true to my values. What's important to me. And there's a few things that continually come up. So with that, I think we'll pause for the first polling question. Maybe if everyone just types in or has a comment on, or do you have a formal poll in here?
Yep, the poll will be popping up onto your screen. Go ahead and vote for which one you believe is the most important aspect of leadership. So we've gotten to hear some of Natasha's thoughts on her career path, and we want to hear from you guys which one you think is the most important. Awesome. We're starting to see some of the results come in. We have about 70% of people who have voted, so we'll give maybe 10 more seconds. Go ahead and vote here. All right, everyone should be seeing the results of the polling. Established credibility was voted number one. However, it's pretty close with take opportunities and lean in. And I think, Josh, you had a lot of great examples there where you're like, you know, I raised my hand, I went for it. It was maybe a little bit outside of what I knew, but I learned a lot of new things from it.
Good, thanks. Yeah, and for me, I think there's a lot of truth to all of those pieces of advice, right? Aspects, you know, across my career as a woman in a fairly male-dominated industry, you know, I've learned a few things. One is, and I always sort of try to chat with new engineers about this, is you will stand out, right? You know, even today, there's rooms I'm in or groups I'm in and people I run into from 10 years ago that remember who I am. Like, you will stand out. So it's important to think about how you want to stand out and what are the things that you want people to remember about you, given they're going to remember you for a long time. It's a very small industry. The other one is how important it is to understand the business part of whatever industry you're in, right? And also how you can bring value to that as an engineer, as a manager, as any role you're doing. You know, you want to really make sure that you can demonstrate value. And yeah, certainly throughout my career, I think I have a bit of a track record of jumping into challenging business environments, being through more downturns than I care to imagine. And but I think perhaps built a bit of a reputation for being able to come into those situations and pull the team together and dig in and figure out what we need to put in place to pull ourselves out of that downturn and prepare for when the upturn comes. Manage my energy. I have some photos there of, you know, running and travel, you know, that I've certainly learned over my career that work-life balance is, I don't use that phrase. I think to me about managing my energy, and there's days when I have a lot of energy to burn and I want to go out and do things. And there's weeks that are being challenging and demanding. And, you know, I go for my run Saturday morning and clear my head, and that re-energizes me and gives me focus for the next thing that I'm tackling. So I'm very aware of where my energy sit at a given time. And that's important to making sure I'm then prepared to take on whatever the next thing is. And ultimately, you know, I think you've got to work hard and deliver, and that's important regardless of what you get into. So yeah, my couple of takeaways, a little bit that was on the poll there, right? Establish credibility, have a willingness to learn. If maybe you're not that expert, be open and ask questions. Have that curiosity. I think that brings a level of credibility as well. Take on projects and opportunities. Certainly that's been my motto throughout my entire life, really. I want to try everything, and if it doesn't work out, that's okay. Own your achievements. I think as women, and I don't like to use that phrase lightly, but we do tend, and I'll make it personal, I don't own my achievements enough and don't self-promote enough, and it's something I've certainly had to work on over my career and make sure that my managers, their managers understand what I'm working on and how I'm succeeding at that, because not everyone is willing to go out and find that information for themselves. So, you know, I've learned I've had to be a lot better at being upfront about the good things we're doing, as well as the challenges that myself and my team are facing. And then finally, lead as you are. It's a great phrase that I've heard, that, you know, my leadership style is going to differ from somebody else's. And I think over the past years, it's becoming that there's a less homogenous leadership style that's being recognized, which is fantastic. And I think as more different types of leaders get into place, that's going to be easier and easier for people to be a bit more able to lead as they normally are and show themselves. And I think that's fantastic to get to that place. And then my one don't is, don't be afraid to seek support, whether it's a mentor or someone or cleaners to come clean your house so that you can go do something with your weekends. And whatever it is, like we all need support, and I think there's a tremendous value there that we bring to each other. I think people are always more willing to lend support than we perhaps, convince ourselves of. So don't be afraid to seek support. So with that, we'll move on to the pig farms. So yeah, my title was From the Permian to the Pig Farms. Started off in the Permian Basin, still very involved with the Permian and the oil and gas side of what I do, but getting into renewable natural gas, which some of that comes from pig farms. So, Soteris, what we do is being part of the energy transition, and renewable natural gas is smack bang in the middle of that. We look to transition from the traditional fuels, particularly as we look at transportation, over to things like renewable natural gas and increasingly hydrogen becoming a part of that conversation. So what is renewable natural gas? Really, we're talking about biomethane. So this is, upgraded biogas that comes from the anaerobic decomposition of waste products, organic waste. And so this is really what's captured at livestock farms, whether it's a dairy or a pig farm, also comes from some landfill waste and also water resource recovery facilities. So typically there's about 40–50% methane in that raw biogas, and so then it needs to be upgraded to become sort of commercial quality. So it goes through a digester typically to collect that, and then upgraded to remove things like carbon dioxide, nitrogen, oxygen, H2S, some other contaminants. And that also ends up leaving the material basically at 95% or more methane, which also gives it a heating value that can be used quite interchangeably with natural gas. So then it can be compressed and put into a pipeline or sent to wherever you might use natural gas for, whether it's heating or cooking or power plants, and increasingly as a substitution for or compressed natural gas in a transportation fuel. The other interesting one as we start to look at hydrogen is renewable natural gas used as a feedstock for steam methane reforming on hydrogen. So then providing an alternate pathway to renewable electrolysis for hydrogen production. We're going to our next poll question. How much RNG do you think is produced in the USA today per day? I think you're muted there, Sabrina.
Thank you. The phrase of 2020 and 2021, you're on mute. I was saying we had quick voting. We're already up to over 70%. So we'll give everyone here just maybe 5–10 more seconds before we close the poll. Perfect. So 50% said 250,000 MMBTUs.
Good, interesting. So the actual answer is 100,000 MMBTU is where we're at today, and 600,000 is where we expect to be by 2025. So definitely some big growth expected there. And hopefully my numbers aren't wrong, since half the audience disagreed with me. So why RNG? Like, why is it exciting today? Why are we talking about it? Why is it, the new black? So there's a couple of big reasons that RNG is exciting. So one, you're taking essentially a waste product and converting that into something that's useful, right? And importantly, you're also replacing a traditional fossil fuel. So basically an organic waste that's renewable and it's going to continue to be there, replacing a fossil fuel. There are some estimates in 2019 that the U.S. had enough biogas facilities or enough opportunity to produce up to 13,000 biogas facilities for RNG, which would equivalent to powering like 3 million homes. So certainly a big upside when you look at supporting natural gas infrastructure today and effectively replacing those high carbon fuels. The other piece is, as we talk about energy transition, RNG certainly has a key role in that, and particularly with the transportation fuels. So you see on the right graph there that has significant greenhouse gas emissions when you compare it to traditional transportation fuels like diesel, even when you take into account the full life cycle emissions. So pretty important, trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions overall. And transportation is one of the more challenging areas to bridge that. The other one that's a big advantage for RNG as a low carbon energy source is it is directly able to be substituted for traditional natural gas. So with that upgrading, as long as you strip out those non-methane components and get the methane up to sort of 95%, you pretty much can use it anywhere you use natural gas today. So you don't need to change your heating elements or your cooking elements in your house. The pipeline infrastructure is the same. And so it's a very easy substitution. So that really helps the economics and the adoption today. The other piece today is obviously it's supported by some federal and state programs on the economic side to incentivize some of those first movers and get the economies of scale that are still coming up. And that is helping support it as a product, again, to substitute for natural gas. So we do expect it to continue to grow. And as you see, there's a lot of potential in the U.S. to take advantage of RNG going forward. So there's a number of different pieces to RNG and different players in the RNG market or the RNG space. Everything from the developer that's looking at the design of the product or the project in itself, who's providing the technology for the cleanup, the stripping of the contaminants and the upgrading, the digesters, whether it comes from a landfill or a livestock or agricultural waste. Also the transportation, a lot of these farms are not necessarily next to a pipeline, so there is a transportation piece, either a pipeline extension or a riser, or in the case of Soteris, where we provide the trucking of the RNG to a pipeline connection, and then obviously getting those connections set up and the offtake for the end use. A number of different people involved in that market today. How to make money at the end of the day. We all like to have these things all have to have an economic incentive, and that's where I think some of these state and federal programs come into place in order to support it. That being said, when you look at the carbon intensity of RNG from agricultural waste, because you're effectively capturing methane that would have otherwise be vented or flared, you actually end up and putting that into the pipeline as a usable stream, you actually have a negative or a net life cycle greenhouse gas reduction. So pretty incredible when you think about that. We're not only are we using the gas for something, but we're avoiding it being put into the air in the first place. And one way to monetize it is the RINs. So effectively, if somebody purchases a gallon equivalent of RNG for transportation fuel, that they get that credit to count towards the total production of their fuel. And so combining the value of that RIN as well as the gas commodity itself, allows the RNG to become very cost competitive against traditional fuels, and that's where we're starting to see this early adoption and continued excitement around RNG. And right now you see it's RNG really, if you look at it on a pure basis has a greater value than conventional natural gas because of some of that support and the market values for the low carbon energy fuels. And there is a lot of specifics around metering and monitoring of that RNG to make sure it's coming from RNG and not a pipeline. But the demonstration of that does mean that the RNG can be quite worthwhile, and we're seeing anywhere from $60 to $125 per MMBTU for RNG today. Just as a comparison, so the natural gas is $2.50 to $4, so quite a differential there today. And I think our last polling question. So we've talked a lot about transportation fuels. What percentage of natural gas vehicles today use RNG versus a straight natural gas?
While we're waiting for the results to come in on this one, we had a couple comments in the chat box here. So Rhonda said she runs a cattle ranch in Central Texas and would volunteer for any beta tests for RNG. So thanks for that, Rhonda. I think, Natasha, you went over a little bit of how do we look at different areas and projects and what makes them interesting for starting off, as well as monetizing. The other question is, what prohibits a total switch to RNG?
That's a good question, Tracy. It's probably a lot of it is cost and access to market. I think, as I mentioned, natural gas cost to get out of the ground is still quite cheap, and it's really only with the incentives that RNG is economic today. So I think, as with any commodity, that differential will come down. But that's probably a big part of it. And the other one is access to infrastructure. So I'll put up a map in a minute, but a lot of if you think about where a lot of our farms are, aside from Rhonda's cattle ranch in Central Texas, which may be near some pipeline infrastructure, but a lot of the farms and the landfills are not necessarily close to pipeline injection points. So obviously, Soteris, we provide a bridge to that, and we support some projects where we truck, but the trucking cost obviously adds to the overall cost. I think there's a couple of things there. We expect RNG to grow rapidly. As I mentioned, we're at 100,000 MMBTU per day today, and expect that to increase sixfold in the next 4 or 5 years. So I think we'll start to see that improve, and certainly costs and infrastructure will come along with that.
Perfect, and we've ended our polling here. So the majority voted for 5%. 5%.
So actually, it's 39% of all natural gas vehicles today. The gas comes from an RNG source. So what I don't have on hand is the percentage of natural gas vehicles on the road. And that's probably closer on that 5% range. But yeah, certainly a large part of natural gas vehicles are using natural gas today. So this pretty much, as you get into the production facilities and just showing some of this build out that we're looking at in the U.S. Today, right? We have 130 operational RNG production facilities online today. And then another 35 in construction and 74 sort of in development as a phase behind that. So certainly a lot of growth expected in this industry. And, you can see there's sort of some clusters around the Midwest where you expect from a farming perspective, and then places like California, which are heavily supported on the regulatory and incentive side to support the RNG development there. So I think this is certainly going to continue to grow and move the needle quite a lot in the switch to natural gas and or switch away from traditional natural gas or as a supplement. So I just want to share one small project that we're working on as an example. We are actually working on a dairy farm, a 5,000 head dairy farm as well in Wisconsin, but our first project was collecting gas from 4 pig farms in Missouri, and basically compressing and trucking that gas to a central pipeline facility. So this has been a really great project for us throughout the year, and we'll continue to build on those. Like I said, we just started up a Wisconsin project with a dairy farm, and I know our VP of RNG is got a lot of irons in the fire with landfills and a number of other projects across the U.S. So it's an exciting space to be part of, and I think certainly with Soteris, it's part of our energy transition, and I think going to continue to grow. So just to kind of summarize, renewable natural gas, right? It's carbon negative or neutral, depending on where it comes from, and so a huge piece of the energy transition there. As we talked about, it's pretty much interchangeable with natural gas with the upgrading, and that makes it very valuable as an easy replacement. And as we've seen with the tremendous push towards ESG from investors, from the public, there's a big focus on the ESG aspect as well, the actual carbon intensity and the greenhouse gas reduction. So that was all I had today. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk. I got a few of my sort of podcasts and blogs and books that I like to read and share, and so yeah, on the slide. But other than that, I think we've probably got a few minutes for questions at this point.
Exactly. Yes. First off, thank you so much for sharing your insights in the presentation, as well as a bit on your career path background. We will open it up for questions, and then we'll go into one more breakout room to be able to discuss in small groups, and then we'll close out our luncheon for today. So the first question I'm seeing is, what are the Soteris trucks fueled by?
Great question, Erica. Thank you. So currently, we run heavy vehicles, so a tractor trailer combination, and we haul the natural gas in our trailers. Our tractors are unfortunately predominantly diesel run today. We're converting those over to CNG. So we have 4 CNG tractors today, and we'll be adding another 15 here in the next couple of weeks. So we're also going through that transition to CNG for our hauling. Our pickups are predominantly CNG today as well.
Fantastic. So if anyone else has questions, feel free to go ahead and put those into the chat now. Not seeing any as of yet. Perfect. All right. Well, then with that, I think we'll open it up for our next networking session. So again, if you'll go ahead and turn your cameras on when you go into your breakout rooms to make this a bit more organic, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Our breakout room conversation will be, what was your key takeaway from today's event? All right, welcome back to the main room, everyone. Are we all back yet? Let's see what's our numbers at. Okay, we still have 11, so we might have some people in their breakout rooms. We'll give them a couple more seconds to join back in.
Don't we have a 4-6 event?
Question?
Yep, we do. That's Patty. So I'll just announce it once we get there.
Perfect.
I wonder if that means it's not on the calendar yet. We'll have to get that up there.
I'm going to have to listen to the recording because I have an HR meeting in just a few minutes, but this was so great. Thanks for making me a guest, and I hope to contribute more to Women's Energy Network this coming year. Thanks. Bye.
Great. Thanks, Deborah. Bye.
Thank you all.
All right. Well, we'll go through our closing here. Before we wrap up today's programming, I'd like to share a few upcoming events to keep everyone informed and aware of WEN's offerings. We have upcoming virtual luncheons, each including 2 networking sessions in the same format that we had today. These are free to members and $15 for non-members, and we are so excited for the lineup that we have planned for this year. So we hope to see you at future events. In addition to the ones that are on this slide, we also have an event coming up on April 6th with Patricia Gallego. I think I'm pronouncing that right. So check out the WEN website. That will be up there for you to register for. And again, another one that we are very excited to have. Additions, we have the recommendation slide from Natasha. So she has kindly provided these additional recommendations to help us to continue to develop and thrive during these uncertain times. We'll be sending these out to all of you who tuned in today shortly after we conclude. So thank you, Natasha, for putting these together. I'm definitely interested in checking out some of these. And in our small group, we were talking about being your own mentor and how important that can be. So I'm interested to read that book and see the other insights and dive into that. I'd also like to remind everyone who's still with us to please update your online WEN profile with any new information so you can continue to receive important news and reminders. Being connected is so important in the digital environment, and I really recommend connecting with us on LinkedIn to get the latest updates on that. That brings us to a close for today's luncheon. Again, just a huge thank you to Natasha for sharing your insights and all of your learnings, and to all of you who tuned in. Please stay safe, and we hope to see you in person again soon.
Thank you. Thank you to the Women's Energy Network, and to you, Sabrina, for hosting as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Natasha. It was awesome.
Bye, ladies.
Bye.